there was this period of like July '97 where I don't think they ever did it before or after, where they would do like a Raw in the US, a Raw in Canada, a Raw in the US, a Raw in Canada. And it was just like, you'd never seen anything like this before, where like these two countries that are right beside each other or hate each other. And they do all those really funny inset promos. You see like a guy with an Austin 316 t-shirt on and like three teeth going, Canadians suck. And then you'd have like Canadians going, America. Like, and it was go back and forth. And there was that famous sign of like the Five Heart Foundation pissing on the US flag that somebody made.
Yeah. All of that was, I don't know if anyone really thought how that would go, but I remember in the beginning, Vince was all on side. They were helping me with my promos and tell me stuff to say. And if you want to know Vince's I remember Vince told me to say that if we were going to give the United States an enema, that stick the hose in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That was Vince's. I remember going, that's kind of stiff. I don't want to say that. And he's like, say it. And so I say it, and I hope Pittsburgh's forgiven me by now. But all the stuff, like Vince was hands-on with me, working with me, all that stuff. And it was kind of great. We were kind of the heel Canadian role that I was playing was started to become really fun. And it was being creative. Like we'd go to Canada and we were like cheating like crazy and they're cheering us. And then we go to the States and we're getting booed and pelted with garbage and stuff like that. And it was a very interesting dynamic that I don't think's ever been duplicated. But they more so after the Canadian pay-per-view, one the Stampede.
Well, I was going to say before that, there was that Raw where I can't remember if it was a flag match or something happened. It was
Halifax.
And you had the white t-shirt on and Vince is on commentary and you come out and you're pissed. And you and Vince end up fighting across the desk where he's pulling your t-shirt and you're trying to get to him. And that was like the first time where I think Jim Ross had done a heel promo the year before where he was like shooting on Vince as the owner of the company. But this was the first time where Vince is getting physical. You shove him down in March. Then in June or July, you guys are scrapping. Like, why did he think that with you, that was the right time to get involved on screen with him as the owner?
I think it was just for me to play the heel role. I can only think that, but all of that was planned by Vince. Like when Vince told me grab him, I grabbed him. And it's funny because when I grabbed Vince that day, he kind of grabbed me in such a way, you'd have to watch it back, but he grabbed me in a way where my arm was restricted. I couldn't hit him. He grabbed me kind of like right here. And he had a really good grip and I couldn't get my arm free. And all I could do was and it wasn't really, if you watch that back, it wasn't a really good beat down or anything on Vince, but it was mostly me trying to shake him and I couldn't get my hands on him. And so, anyway, all that was Vince's thing. And then, of course, we would go to the States the next week and it would be the opposite. But it was playing really well, I thought. Like the whole story, everything was moving really progressively. I thought it was funny because we were, ever since Shawn won the title, WWF had been losing in the ratings to WCW. And they were doing all that NWO stuff on their channel. And I always remember going, I think WWF is, like what we're doing is way better than what they're doing on WCW, but WCW is still winning the ratings. And I just know that as we got closer to the summer, after that Canadian Stampede, as we went into the summer, Vince and all them, they completely cut the power on my promos. Like Vince was giving me all these suggestions and you're going to say this, and he would write down stuff for me to say. And then it was like, I remember it was like, well, we're not going to help. They stopped helping me. It's like, we're not going to tell you what to say. You can say, well, you figure it out. And I remember going kind of like a lot of stuff they had me write down was really stupid, like kind of stuff that I wouldn't say, like that was not, it would seem like thoughtless, like something like Triple H sat down and wrote it down for me, and it was written down more to see me fail, like see the whole Hart Foundation thing as the heels. I could feel they cut the power and we started to lose momentum, and that was kind of.
Because the Canadian Stampede pay-per-view, like that pay-per-view, when you watch the main event, I don't think it's ever been done since, where you have 5 baby faces in Austin, Shamrock, Goldust, and LOD, who are all baby faces everywhere else, but they come to Canada, the biggest villains in the world, and then you guys come out and the camera's shaking and there's all the hearts. Bruce has got the shades on, like it's all like. How did they decide to go to Canada to do the Stampede, and what are your memories of that show?
Well, really, the truth was the whole point was Owen was going to win to set up him and Austin for SummerSlam, as I remember it. And me, like I said, had just had the knee surgery, and I still wasn't 100%. That was actually my first match back was that pay-per-view. I could walk across the room kind of, but I couldn't jump or run or do a lot of the stuff so I had to be careful still. So, we had to work around all that. And, being in a tag match with 10 guys, you can tag in and out, and you're only in there for a few seconds. I thought it all went pretty good, but the whole idea was for Owen to get the win on Steve at the end to set up them in SummerSlam. But then as soon as that happened, they seemed to cut the power on the whole thing. I always felt like that's when they killed the whole. Been somewhere in one of their meetings, or whether it's Triple H or Shawn or the 3 of them, put an X through the whole thing, and from there on, it was like a sabotage where they just kept making us do stupid stuff, say stupid things, and lose our momentum. I remember we were really intelligent a few weeks ago, saying stuff that was smart, that was really clever, and that would get people's attention and get heat with the fans, at the same time make them kind of mad that we were so smart. Or not smart, but clever.
When you look back at Canadian Stampede now, after everything that's happened, is that a career highlight that you guys were there with your family and in Calgary?
Yeah. It was the loudest pop I can remember of any match I ever had. And I thought it was going to be. It's going to be huge when I walk out, especially when I first walk out, because I didn't wrestle in Calgary that often for WWE. Well, we did seemed like once a year you wrestled in Calgary, but I always wrestled, sort of not a great opponent kind of thing. Like they'd stick me in. Well, often when I was with Jim Neidhart and the Hart Foundation, whenever I wrestled in Calgary, they made sure I lost the fall. They always pinned me in Calgary. And then when I was Intercontinental Champion, they'd put me with people that I didn't wrestle perfect or Owen, actually I did wrestle Owen in Calgary, but I often had kind of less than better opponents in my matches in Calgary. I never really had a great match there that was deserving of the fans that I had there. And when that pay-per-view came, the Stampede pay-per-view, and they had everybody walk out one after another. And I think Pillman came out first, and Pillman had been a big star for my dad in Stampede Wrestling, so he got a huge ovation. And then Davey went out with my sister, and then Owen, and Jim was second, right? But when I came out, I knew. I said it's going to be huge, and I walked out, and it was so loud I couldn't hear anything. And I walked out to the ring, and I was like, and then the match happened, and it was me and Steve kind of picking up where we left off is how we started the match. And it was great stuff. My brother Bruce, he was supposed to be the 6th member of the Hart Foundation. They were talking about creating this junior heavyweight championship belt at the time. And I had talked to Vince. I said, why don't you my brother Bruce is actually a pretty good heel, pretty good villain. And you can make him like the 6th member of the Hart Foundation, and he could be your first junior heavyweight champion, which would have been good for my brother Bruce, who'd been begging for a couple of years to get some kind of a break with WWE, and for some reason they never gave Bruce a chance. But I remember I had Vince almost talked into it. I remember Vince goes, I kind of like that idea, and I'm sure Triple H and Shawn killed that idea. But in that match, Bruce was if you watch that Wrestling with Shadows, there's some part where we're talking to Pat Patterson about the match, and we start talking about Steve Austin throwing a drink on my dad or something like that. And it was like, we started laughing about it, that if Steve Austin threw a drink at my dad, it would really piss the fans off. And I think it was something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was my brother Bruce was going to throw a drink at Steve Austin. And that's how it was. And throw a drink at him, and Steve would grab my dad, because Bruce, that was the setup. But my brother Bruce, he got a big giant soda or whatever it was, about this big, and I don't know, it was like 5 minutes into the match, and Steve was fighting on the floor. Somebody wasn't the right time or the right cue. He threw the drink at Steve Austin, and it's like 20 minutes early, And no one even noticed it, and the match keeps going on, and then everybody, all my other brothers are saying to Bruce, it's like, you screwed up. You got to go get it. He had to go get another drink and do the whole thing again. So then when it happened the second time, I think he was a little bit rattled, maybe because he screwed up, and then he had to go and send somebody to get a drink, or somehow get another drink in his hand for the right moment, which was not far from that. And then he threw the drink on Steve Austin. And I'm not sure if Steve was just mad at my brother, or had heard a lot about my brother. So my brother Bruce had a tendency to kind of write himself in for a bigger part of the movie than he had a script for. And he had a tendency for that. And I think when he threw the drink at Steve Austin, and Steve attacked him in the front row there, I guess Steve potatoed Bruce a couple of times and broke his glasses. He's wearing glasses, and broke the frames on his glasses. He hit him. So at the very end of the match, when Bruce had to jump over the railing and attack and cause the distraction for Owen to beat Steve Austin at the very end, he was on fire. Wrestling was real. And he made a comeback on Hawk and Shamrock and beat everybody up on the floor. And he punched Steve so hard in the kidneys that he actually hurt Steve. And Steve was, they gave Steve the next day off on that Saturday. When on the Monday, we did Monday Night Raw. If you remember, we were the Edmonton Oilers jerseys, and we talked about Canada as a country where they take care of the sick and the old and all that stuff. But that night, Steve couldn't work. He had to take the night off because his kidneys were bruised, or he was peeing blood, or I can't remember how bad it was, but it was supposedly pretty bad that he couldn't work. And Vince was livid. And so they put the kibosh on. My brother Bruce won in the junior title, and they never brought him in after that, which, didn't ever sat well with my brother Bruce. He always thought that I had something to do with that, which I did. I did everything I could do to get my brother Bruce hired, and somehow he cost himself that opportunity.